Hey guys, Sen here. Last week I was able to break the record for capital P 2 shots at 2,000 plus upgrades. The old record stood at 4 2 shots, which was shared by a bunch of the clans in the top 10 in the world, but I was able to get 5 of them over at Rebirth and take the lone record for myself. But this week, I was actually able to one-up myself once again, this time over at the Foons, where I was able to land 7 peak 2 shots. And not just that, I also landed another 7 peak 2 shots over at the Rebirth once again in the same raid weekend, meaning I now have the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3 record for capital peak 2 shots at 2,000 plus upgrades. I am pretty good at these, and I'm going to break down all of some of my best replays I was able to get in this raid weekend, showcasing a lot of the different top strategies that I'm taking advantage of to get my peak 2 shots and help my clan reach the performance cap and get as many trophies as possible. And here we go up against a maxed capital peak, and this base looks like it's pretty legit. This does not look like something that you can take out in 2 attacks, but when you're only facing a certain number of capital peaks in a raid weekend for the top clans, it's around 16 right now. You gotta make every single opportunity count, and let's see how we're able to get this done. Starting off, we use some rams up the right side and up the left side. Open up those walls. Those rams try to pull any traps as well as clear the trash buildings, as they also sneak into the dead zone of the multi-mortar, pull in those giants so we can sneak in a pack of minions, finish off the multi-mortar, and those giants are going to pull those minions back towards their little post over here outside of range of any air defenses, and they're going to slowly work through all that HP. The giants on the capital peak are super annoying, so if you're able to take them out super efficiently like this on the first hit, that is almost always worth it. But against this layout, like I said on the last capital peak 2 shot video, it's all about spell efficiency if you're trying to take out the space in 2 attacks, because you have a very limited number of spells, and your spells on the first hit can also help you on the second hit. So if you're able to plan out your spells accordingly, you can actually get double value off of the first spells you bring. This frost spell over here is going to help my golem on its approach on the first hit, slowing down all these defenses, and then it's going to help out my second army on the second hit, and you're going to see how. But we're going to send in the mountain golem to the right side of the base. I'm going with a mountain golem because all of these defenses are super spread. The mountain golem is not going to get focused down by too much DPS all at once, and we go with the mountain golem instead of the hog riders that would be susceptible to all these traps that are going to be inside these little gaps over here, as well as the Sparky that does not chain very effectively off of these defenses that are spaced so far apart like this. So the mountain golem was really the only option that I had against the space. It was basically just mountain golem and pray and hope he's able to move far into the base. But there's not too much DPS in the core over there besides all of these cannons and point defenses up the right side, and we can try to pick them off with some hogs and some barbarians as my golem is working his way through. We have a zap spell just in case the golem walks too far in range of the multi or the single inferno tower, as well as some additional hog gliders to try to stun that thing and make sure the golem does not go down. But this time the golem is actually smart and goes away from the inferno tower, but he also paths away from the rocket artillery. That's a little bit unfortunate, but we are going to be able to make do. As the golem is distracting all the defenses, we sneak in another hog rider to try to take out this cannon as well as other flanking defenses, so the mountain golem is not able to focus down. And then as he's finally moving in towards the blast bow, there's basically no saving him at this point. We still have a zap cell, and we're going to drop it down at some point to try to deal a little bit of DPS against the buildings. We did not need it to stun anything on this first hit, but we were able to use it to try to get a little bit further into the base and deal a little bit of damage on that blast bow. The mountain golem is going to go down to that rocket artillery shell, but we are set up for the second hit. Now, normally when you go in with a mountain golem haste strategy on the first attack, you have the haste spell down and you want to use the haste spell again by using another mountain golem, but in this case, because there's so many trash buildings all around the haste spell, we don't have a great angle against the capital peak as well as the inferno towers as well as the enemy troops on the backside. This just seems too nasty. Mountain golem does not seem like a great option against this space, and so we're going to go in with a different plan. We're going to start off with some graveyard spells on the top side over here on top of this multi-cannon. The graveyard skeletons are going to overwhelm this, take this entire trash section out, and then the second graveyard spell is actually going to try to pull the raid cart outside of range of the inferno tower, and those Larrys are going to quickly overwhelm the slow firing raid cart and take this entire section out on the backside as well. But in order to get our graveyard spells going, we're actually going to use some hog riders, a giant to distract all these 3 defenses, especially this first capital peak shot, And then we're able to sneak in some hog gliders to stun all these big defenses and work our way slowly in towards the capital peak and start generating some Larrys. And now we're able to directly target the capital peak. We're going to stun it with some hog gliders and send in an Inferno Dragon as our main DPS to get through all of that HP. Make sure that capital peak is never able to get another shot against me as we go in up the bottom side with a giant as well as a ram to open up the wall, and then the P.E.K.K.A. to go in behind while the Spear Thrower as well as the cannon is distracted, and that P.E.K.K.A. is going to remove this entire bot section, the minions of the bottom right section to clear the Crusher as well as all the trash buildings and funnel the P.E.K.K.A. up the left, and we're trying to converge up the left side of the base. This Tesla popped as well as a log trap, and that made sure that my Larrys were not able to overwhelm the enemy raid cart, but my Inferno Dragon is finally smart for once and snipes the cannon and is going to go in and finish off that enemy raid cart and get so much value for that 15 camp space with that one giant. Was actually able to keep my P.E.K.K.A. alive. This P.E.K.K.A. would basically be dead if that giant was not taking that Spear Thrower and that cannon, and you're going to see how much of a difference this is going to make on the back section of the attack, because otherwise we would not have enough DPS to try to get through this blastway even though it's frosted on the backside like this. We're going to use our remaining Rams as well as Barbarian to try to make sure that Inferno Tower is never able to lock onto my P.E.K.K.A. We have to keep that P.E.K.K.A. alive. We have to get it on top of that blast bow to try to help take that thing out, and we're going to make sure that we use our last hog glider to try to go in, some Rams to help distract and try to stun that Inferno Tower to sneak in our P.E.K.K.A. for the backside, a Larry Barrel to try to pick off any straggling point defenses as well as trash buildings and help provide a little bit more distraction before we sneak in our Inferno Dragon while the enemy Super Dragon is all distracted on some Larrys and try to take out that last threat to me on the backside of this base. But that was a super nice plan, breaking down all the sections of the base after setting up super nicely with the Golem Frost on the first hit, and notice how much value that Frost got for me on the second hit, slowing down that Inferno Tower, slowing down the capital peak so it did not get a shot on my hogs, and allowing me to two-shot this maxed out base. And now we're up against a super compact capital peak, and once again I want to highlight the spell efficiency. Look at all these defenses that are being frosted on the first attack, especially the capital peak, and that's going to help us immensely on the second hit and not going to have our wizards get blasted randomly by that capital peak beams. But now we're going up the left side of the map with a bunch of ramps, open up the walls so survivors inside are going to clear the trash buildings in behind as well as deal with that Spear Thrower before the Sparky even gets her first blast off. Because the buildings are so compact, Sparky is going to do such a great job. Actually, this raid cart gets splashed as well, but starts to lock onto my Sparky, so we send in a couple of our Barbarians to try to assassinate that thing and make sure our Sparky doesn't do too much damage. Notice I did not rage that first Sparky shot because we're holding our rage a little bit to try to put it a tiny bit deeper inside the base to make sure wizards are being covered on top of the capital peak, and so that way we don't have to invest another rage on the second attack. You gotta be efficient on your spells, even if we have to delay that rage a little bit longer and make sure we use a little bit more tanking to keep our Sparky alive. The Sparky is still going to get such insane value. Look at that shot off the giant cannon blasting the rocket artillery behind the capital peak, and because those barbs on the bottom side clear all those trash buildings, we open up the map up the top side of the base, and we're now able to snipe this enemy dragon. We decided to hold back on any more giants on top of our Sparky so we can use that extra giant to help take out that enemy super dragon and expose the blast bow on the backside of the base, and we can use a graveyard spell as well as some Larrys to try to overwhelm that thing. There's not too many gaps for any traps back here, and that means if we're able to take that thing out, we're able to take out a huge threat on the backside of the map, and we just have to worry about landing our wizard bomb for the second attack. But normally when I've landed a capital peak 2-shot, the clan chat congratulates me, they tell me GG and whatnot, but this time they were typing GG after this first attack because they knew this was over. Normally you have to execute your second attack really well to try to pull off the capital peak 2-shot, but in this case I can basically do whatever I want because I am about to overkill the crap out of this base. Starting off, we use a ram to take the blast bow for our Larrys to approach on the entry. I was trying to get a little fancy here. I probably could have just used a hog rider instead and not worried about the Larry barrel. We used a giant to try to tank the rocket artillery as well as one shot from the capital peak beam like so, and then we're going to go in with some rams with our graveyard spells on the backside of the base, one on top of the blast bow to help DPS that down, and then two next to the giant cannon as well as the Inferno Tower to make sure that they're not shooting at my wizards that are chaining on top of the capital peak, and then a bunch of rams to get those graveyard spells going and make sure that our wizards are never going to get shot after we drop in that hog glider to stun that thing. Because our Sparky did so much damage to the capital peak on the first attack, it barely has enough HP to be able to chain off of and take out all the defenses in behind, but we have perfectly enough to still get the job done, and we have a ton of hog gliders to take out the remaining small defenses left on the map. We still have all of our wizards up, we still have a couple more hog gliders in the camps, and there's just not enough defenses on the backside of the base. That first attack was so insane, managing our Sparky, calculating where the Sparky was going to go and get all that value leading into the peak, and just getting that rocket artillery in the backside. That was just a chef's kiss. Sparky is balanced moment against Capital Peaks, and we're going to just swarm those last few trash buildings in the base with so much swag remaining. And here we go up against another compact Capital Peak. Now you might be thinking, we're just going to go in with another Rage Sparky setup and try to blast into the base and chain down the entire world, but unfortunately, I've actually calculated on this attack that Sparky was not going to be as effective as it was on the last hit. There just really isn't a great Sparky entry, so you usually want to be trying to calculate your Sparky entry, at least the first couple of buildings that it takes out. On this case, the left side entry is super awkward. There's just not much chain targets over here, and on the right side entry, we can use the Sparky to easily take out this giant cannon as well as all these point defenses over here with the Sparky splash radius. But after the Sparky finishes off all these defenses, she's going to move in towards all of these open wall segments, in towards all these defenses in front of the Capital Peak, blast them all down, but they're not that big defenses, and it's just not that valuable, and then the Sparky gets stuck on top of the Capital Peak and then just ends up going down. It's just not as great as it was on that other attack, so we're instead going in with some Graveyard Hogs, the P.E.K.K.A, to finish up the right side ruins over there. Those Graveyard Spells on top of the Giant Cannon, on top of the Blast Bow, distract all those defenses for my Hog Riders to move in on their approach, and then keep our P.E.K.K.A alive as long as possible and try to pick off as many defenses as we can. Some barbs up the right side of the map to open up the map for deployment, so we can then use a giant as well as Inferno Dragon to try to snipe that enemy Super Dragon. But at this point, my hogs are petering out, my Larrys are stuck inside of that blast bow compartment, and all my troops are fizzling out, and we're just going to use our Inferno Dragon as well as our giant to try to take out that enemy Super Dragon. I got a little bit of cold feet, and I dropped down my barrel early because I thought the enemy Super Dragon was going to retarget on top of my Inferno Dragon, but look at that. Actually, the P.E.K.K.A is able to walk from the right side over here all the way, clearing all these trash buildings and finish off that giant cannon at the end with her death damage. But because I was early on my Skeleton Barrel, I wasn't able to hold the Skeleton Barrel for later and try to distract the Inferno Tower. I was originally using that barrel to distract the Inferno Tower as well as the enemy raid cart, and just use that Inferno Dragon to try to take that entire section out, but that did not quite work out. But our spells are still down from my other attack. The Frost Spell is still slowing down all these defenses, and our Sparky with the help of the Rage Spell is going to blast down all those 2x2 buildings all at once at the very start and work her way into the Capital Peak. I was originally going to take an Inferno Dragon outside of range of any air defenses to try to melt through all of that HP with the help of the Rage Spell, but this is the moment I realized I screwed up and I did not bring in Inferno Dragon to my camp, so I just bring in a couple more Hog Riders to try to stun that enemy Capital Peak and make sure it doesn't get too much damage off of my Sparky, because my Sparky is going to be super critical for trying to finish off this base. We drop 2 Graveyard Spells on top of the Multi-Mortar Dead Zone, just like so, to make sure the Multi-Mortar doesn't splash it, as well as it will help distract the Inferno Tower for all of my troops to sneak in. My Hog Riders are going to take out all these point defenses, the Inferno Tower as well as the cannon on the right side, and then my Sparky is going to chain down both the bomb towers as well as the Crusher on the right side. So my Sparky takes out the Hog threats and the Hogs take out the Sparky threats. They're moving along into the base, and as they start dying off, we're going to get a bunch of Graveyard Skeletons to try to finish off all these clan houses. This Rocket Artillery on the backside is pretty annoying. It's one of the last threats on this map. We have a barrel as well as minion to clean up this backside over here, but we have a Hog, a Barb, and a Ram to try to distract this Rocket Artillery. My Sparky is low, and we have to make sure we take out these last couple of slash defenses before all of my troops, all of my Larrys get roasted by that Wizard Tower, and we will fall short on this base. So we're going to be careful. Use the Hog Rider to try to help DPS down that Rocket Artillery. One blast, just like so. My Sparky has just enough HP to take one more shot like that, and then the Sparky is also going to get a little bit of damage on top of that enemy Wizard Tower for my Hog Riders to finish that thing off, and the Larrys are going to kill the enemy Giants with a Larry Barrel as well as minions, like I said, to finish off those last couple of defenses on the back side of the base, and that is another 2-shot against a compact layout. This time, we went in with the Hog Riders because I figured that the Sparky pathing was not going to be good enough to try to get a ton of value on the base. So even though it was a compact layout, you still have to consider your Sparky pathing a little bit, because otherwise you will not get that much value. Even though it just seems like the right target for Sparky, I figured that Graveyard Hogs would do much better on this base, and we are able to take it out in 2 attacks. And here we go up against a corner Capital Peak, and these are the prime targets for a Graveyard Hog attack. Starting off, we use a pack of Rocket Balloons to finish off the Spirit Thrower, and then it can work its way up towards the right side of the map and finish off all of these buildings outside of range of any air defenses like so, and just get so much value. Except there is a Giant Bomb over here, and it's going to ruin my day. We are going to be able to grab this cannon over here, which is fine, but we're not going to be able to grab this Spirit Thrower over here. Still great value, 1 pack of Rocket Balloons for 3 point defenses. I can't complain about that, but now we're going to work up the bottom side of the base with a P.E.K.K.A. With the recent P.E.K.K.A. buff, the P.E.K.K.A. now one-shots the Spirit Throwers as it works its way towards the left side of the map and finish off this Wizard Tower and set a huge funnel for my Hog Riders to work their way in. These corner peaks are the prime targets for the Hog Riders because you're able to slowly push in and collapse all the defenses on your way towards the Capital Peak, especially when the Dragon is very exposed on the outside. Normally you want to be able to pick off the Dragon with an Inferno Dragon or some little troops and easily take that thing out, but as long as it's not in the middle of the base and killing all of your Graveyard Skeletons and killing all your Hogs, you're good to go, and send in the Hog Riders to try to take out as many defenses as possible. Take advantage of all the stun abilities to try to pick off as many straggling defenses as possible. Make sure that the Larrys from the Graveyard spells are not going to get targeted down by all of the splash defenses inside the base. You put 1 Graveyard spell on top of the Multi-Mortar and some other Graveyard spells on top of those other point defenses around the base. Target the Bomb Tower on the left side of the map with a Hog Glider, and our P.E.K.K.A. has done so much damage toward the Blast Bow on the left side of the map. A Hog Glider to stun the last Crusher in the middle of the base like so not all my troops get blasted, but that Blast Bow turns around and snipes all my Larry shields, and then 1 bomb, just like that, poof, all my Larrys are gone, and they're not able to finish off the Blast Bow. Still, we are able to get 68% on this first attack, but most of that percent was actually in clan houses, so there's still a ton of big defenses on the backside of the map, so don't underestimate the Capital Peak from here. I think all the big defenses are still on the map, which is kind of crazy that we have 68% with none of them down, but all of them are super exposed, and it's just a matter of trying to execute. If you try to do a Wizard Bomb, which you basically have to do a Wizard Bomb against this much value that's right here, you have to be careful, especially those rocket artilleries are super nasty, and there's a ton of gaps that could be hiding a bunch of bombs. So we want to make sure that we push into the Capital Peak before we start dropping down our wizards, so we can get them in as quick as possible to try to blast all that down. We drop a Giant to tank the Blast Bow, as well as a P.E.K.K.A. to finish off the enemy Giant. The enemy Giant is actually going to spawn us Graveyard Skeletons for us as well, which is nice, but now we're going to push our way in with some Barbs, with some Rams, with some Hog Riders, and we're going to try to collapse our way in with a Rage spell as well, leading in towards the Giant Cannon and Crusher, as well as the Capital Peak for our wizards later. But we just have to make sure that we're able to directly target the Capital Peak and make sure there are no traps around. A bomb actually pops, and now once we are finally here at the Capital Peak, drop down all 5 wizards, drop some troops up the right side of the map to make sure that my wizards are not aligned with the rocket artilleries as they get shot down. And then we drop down the Hog Gliders to stun the Capital Peak and make sure that it doesn't get another shot and try to target my wizards. But so many traps pop, my wizards are now super low as well. But we have so many troops for the back section over there with the Inferno Tower, with the Blast Bow, as well as the Spear Thrower that is kind of annoying back here. That's why we're not going with a Giant as well as an Inferno Dragon, because that combination, I'm not sure I have enough to push through that with just the Inferno Dragon and Giant over there. But we waited too long and the Dragon is flying over. We just quickly use our minions to try to snipe that Blast Bow and just quickly use a Ram to tank the enemy Dragon and try to sneak in our Inferno Dragon with the help of a Zap spell, and we're going to easily take that thing out for another 2 shots. So the Hog Riders are going to be so good against spaces that don't have a well-placed Dragon and are a corner peak, because those Hog Riders just collapse all those defenses in towards the back section. You either use a Wizard Bomb when there's so many targets behind there like that, or you use Inferno Dragons to finish off the peak at the end, but you can get super easy 2 shots against styles of bases like these that are very common at this range. And finally, we have a double L base. Now, this base is so common at 2,000 plus upgrades. In the 3 clans that I was playing in during this very weekend, I think I saw this base 9 or so times, or variations of this. and I two-shot this like 6 or 7 times. So you can get really consistent at this, and it will help you so much in the raid weekend, especially your clan if no one else knows how to take this base out into attacks. There's a lot of plans for this base. This base is very heavily modified. And the normal versions, there's a bunch of plans on our Discord server, so check them out over there, as well as in my last video I covered Luca's plan and showed you guys how to take that one out into attacks. But this one is heavily modified in that this capital peak is very far back, so Luca's plan doesn't work, as well as this Inferno Tower isn't in chain distance of this giant cannon, so my plan also doesn't work. So we actually have to think outside of the box, and here is what I come up with. I drop a jump still over here towards this dead zone, drop a ram to test for any zap traps, pull a zap trap, then we are safe to drop down our Sparky into this air defense, one shot the air defense outside range of the rocket artillery, and before she steps up we drop down a ram to tank as well as pull any more traps, and then we actually drop down a frost spell on top of this capital peak instead of hitting this Inferno Tower as well as this giant cannon over here like normal, because we're going to try to be greedy and try to take out this capital peak on this first attack. Normally you want to hit this Inferno Tower to be safe and make sure your Sparky doesn't get absolutely blasted. But you're going to see what we do. Now, because we use the jump spell as well as the rage spell, the Sparky pushes herself back and goes after the air bombs instead of the giant cannon. So the purpose of the jump spell was to line up the Sparky blast on top of the air bombs to allow the Sparky to one-shot the Inferno Tower after the Crusher, or actually the Larry's finish off the Inferno Tower. But that was the idea, and we just took out that entire chunk of buildings, and then we're pulling the dragon over with the help of the giant as well as the ram into the rage spell with the help of the Inferno Dragon. On top of the rage spell, we're able to burst through that enemy dragon so quickly, and now because we were able to greed the frost spell on top of the district hall, now the district hall is now super slowed down, and the P.E.K.K.A. is going to be able to try to take that thing down with the help of an Inferno Dragon in behind outside of range of the air defenses. Or just kidding, the Inferno Dragon decides to walk or fly into the range of the rapid rocket. I dropped her down here and she somehow ends up here somehow. Don't ask me how Inferno Dragons were programmed. I swear none of the nutrition it ate growing up went to its brain, but the Sparky actually survives because we did a great job at distracting the Inferno Tower, and it's actually distracting a couple of the beams from the capital peak. So my P.E.K.K.A. has just enough HP to burst through that capital peak, and we are set up so nicely for the second attack. Now the thing is, against this base, if you're able to take out a whole side as well as the capital peak, you are set up so nicely for the second hit. We were also able to get the dragon, so we can basically do whatever we want. And I'm gonna have to ask you guys to turn away from your screen right now. Okay, so here's a confession, alright? I am using mass miners, I am using miner spams, but this was late in the raid weekend. I also spent too much brain power already on capital peak 2 shots. I did not want to use any more brain power. I used a ram and a barbarian to finish off the Tesla, and we're going in with our miner spam now. Because we're able to cover all of these backside big defenses with the frost spell, that's a huge value frost spell. Then we'll drop down a giant to try to tank a couple shots from the blast bow. And we are not able to hit this rocket artillery, but I do not care about this rocket artillery, and you're going to see why. We drop all the miners on top of the giant cannon, dodge one rocket artillery shell. We're going to dodge a second rocket artillery shell as my miners burrow, and then we're going to drop down our heal spell, dodge a third rocket artillery shell. Then we zap the Crusher to make sure it doesn't get shot, dodge a fourth rocket shell as my miners go down once again, and then dodge a fifth miner or rocket artillery shell as the miners dig again before the rocket artillery finally goes down without getting any damage on my miners. This is why Balloon Lagoon is getting one shot at lower levels by miners, because the rocket artillery is just so useless. It can basically never hit the miners because the shells fire so slowly through the air and the miners burrow so quickly underground after finishing their defenses so fast. You put them all on one tile and the rocket artilleries are basically never able to shoot at your miners ever again. We have so much left as we burst through the last few defenses on this base for a sick miner 2-shot. Who knew miners were good in the clan capital? Alright, hope you guys enjoyed today's attacks. I'm actually thinking of making this into a semi-regular series where I cover all of the capital P 2 shots that I get in a single raid weekend, because they're almost always very fun and very challenging to go for, especially at 2,000 plus upgrades where almost every peak you face is completely maxed. They require a ton of planning and an insane level of execution, because even a single mistake will destroy any hopes of achieving one of them. So let me know what you think of this idea. I know it's a little bit more try-hard than my usual kind of content, but like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video, and make sure you join the Discord server if you haven't already. Take care.